In just hours, the first of a two-day wake for fallen NYPD officer Jonathan Diller will begin. His untimely death gaining national attention. Diller was shot and killed by a career criminal during a routine traffic stop. He was just 31 years old. Just 3 years on the police force. There he is, you see him. He was a husband and a new father to that beautiful one-year-old boy you're looking at. Such a tragedy, a national tragedy. Diller's fellow officers lined the streets for a dignified transfer last night. Over 1,000 people attended a candlelight vigil, and today, thousands more, family, friends, colleagues, all expected to attend his wake, including former President Donald Trump. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany, here with my co-host, Harris Faulkner and Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Kennedy, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, and former New York Congressman and New York gubernatorial candidate, Lee Zeldin. Trump will join a sea of blue today, honoring slain officer Jonathan Diller. The visitation begins at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll, of course, show you those images here on Fox News. Trump was invited to attend the wake by Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman. Meanwhile, President Biden will also be in New York. He'll be at a star-studded Democratic fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall. The guests of honor include former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. And the glamorous event, dubbed a new NYC, New York City Money Bomb, is expected to raise a historic $25 million for Biden's campaign. Today, two presidential candidates, two very different events. And, you know, Lee, we don't know. President Biden could show up, could go. Also, I would note the White House has put out their deep condolences for this family. They have said, Karine Jean-Pierre, that she's praying for this family as well. But it is unavoidable. Political Playbook today said today's NYC split screen. So there are two images, two presidential candidates here in New York City. And as I understand it, you will be attending the funeral for Officer Diller.
I will. We'll be heading there from here. And while his one-year-old son will have to grow up without a dad, may not be watching our conversation here for many years and be able to appreciate it. When that time comes for that family to look back at this moment, know how grateful I am as a New Yorker, as an American, that we have heroes like Officer Diller, who was standing watch, who was willing to give up his life in defense of safety and security of us as New Yorkers. There are a lot of NYPD officers retiring, a lot of people quitting, a lot of folks aren't signing up and they're heading elsewhere. But this officer gave up his life, and to his family, our appreciation, our gratitude is unyielding and never ending. We have a situation with severe, out of control crime in this city. They have elected officials like Jumaane Williams and others who are advocating policies that are throwing our law enforcement under the bus, defunding up in Albany pro-criminal laws that are prioritizing criminals over law-abiding New Yorkers. Everyone hears about the cashless bail law, but that's not it. Prosecutors like Alvin Bragg who refuse to prosecute. And in New York City, an attack on qualified immunity and people, elected officials not having the back of law enforcement. So it's a tough moment to be law enforcement. I came from a law enforcement household, and I'll finish where I started. To this one-year-old, when that time comes to be watching this discussion, just know in this moment how very grateful we all are, and we'll never forget.
No doubt. Emily, I was reading the details of this horrific killing, some of which was caught on tape. It is so hard to watch. It made my heart tug. A one-year-old boy who will not know his father here on earth. Maybe one day in heaven he will know his father. He will. But he will know of his heroism. He will know of his heroism. And I give great credit to the former president for going and bringing attention to this story. All day you will hear about Officer Jonathan Diller, and even more so because the former president is showing up and highlighting this hero.
That's right. And he is representing all Americans in that moment. He is representing all New Yorkers in that moment and saying thank you, and grieving alongside of Jonathan Diller's wife, Stephanie, his one-year-old son, and everyone in that family. And I just want to point out as well that President Trump apparently has called Stephanie, Mrs. Diller, and spoke with her by phone, which is a tremendous gesture and again represents all Americans and all New Yorkers by doing so. And that's what a president does. And that's what a leader does, is serve and represent at the same time. And I'd also like to highlight that Massapequa is an amazing community. They have rallied around law enforcement. It's law enforcement strong there. They are patriotic. There are blue ribbons everywhere. There's a thin blue line painted down the street. And we know that Officer Diller was, as they say, a cop's cop. He was an incredible man. All of these testimonies have been pouring out from neighbors, his brother-in-law, the Police Benevolent Association president that said he was a police officer that loved doing his job. His brother-in-law said he was crazy about his job. He was born to be a cop. He was born to be a hero. And he died being a hero. He died doing what he loved. And apparently the neighbor was saying, like, he was standing on his ladder cleaning the gutters. And so Officer Diller came over and he said he climbed the ladder. He cleaned my gutter so I didn't have to. And he said there's so many stories like that where Officer Diller really was beloved by his community in addition to being so deeply missed. And final point, when officers are shot in the line of duty, it resurrects the grief and the pain of every officer that has been killed in the line of duty. And I want to point out Officer Brian Moore, who was killed in 2015 here at NYPD. His father, the Moore family, has connected with Officer Diller's father, connected with that family, because that community is a sacred and tragic community to be a part of. But that is who is also rallying around the Diller community. And I'll just close by saying that the former mayor of Massapequa came out and said, you know, it breaks my heart that this officer has been killed, and now that this family will not have a father that will come home every day. But he said, this community, we will rally around this family forever.
No doubt. Harris, I do want to pull up this suspected killer's rap sheet. 21 arrests, 9 felonies. He was due in court April 1st. I mean, that's crushing to think about. That's just days from now. Released on $75,000 bail.
Yeah, I mean, he was a professional criminal. That was his line of work, and unfortunately, you know, what we look at now is that, as Lee put it, he's not the only one out there. And it is because of people like Officer Diller that more people don't lose their lives and come in contact with the recidivists, the bloodthirsty recidivists who just can't get off the addiction of committing crimes, and in this case, killing. We talked about the wife, Stephanie. I just want to go back to what you said about one-year-old Ryan. I've tried to say his name a lot today. Because you're right, he won't see this contemporaneously. It may be a while before he's old enough to hop online and Mom will show him what was said about his father on that day. And I hope that if they find our program all those years ahead, that Ryan knows how important a part of history that his father has played. I keep waiting for a tipping point. I've done police specials on this network more than anybody. We talk with cops and about them on this program every day. And I keep waiting for that tipping point where we say enough is enough. No more ambushes, no more disrespectful, dangerous rhetoric against the protectors who protect us. Enough is enough. But that point hasn't come yet. And so I would just say to young Ryan and his mom, Stephanie, that you're a part of history. You're awakening America to know that we need to do something better than what we're doing now to protect the protectors. Yeah,
and to underscore your point, New York Post headline, NYPD Sergeants Union warns anti-police New York politicians to stay away from the funeral. Kennedy, I want to play the White House comment on this. Here is what the White House press secretary had to say.
Our hearts go out to this officer who tragically lost his life in the line of duty. We're also praying for his family during this difficult time, who now has an empty seat at their dinner table. President Biden is deeply grateful for the sacrifices police officers make to keep our community safe. This shooting is yet another painful reminder of the toll of gun violence, that what it's doing to inflict on families in our communities in our nation. And that's why the president signed more than 24 executive actions. That's why we're able to pass a bipartisan agreement to deal with the gun violence that we're seeing in this country. Obviously, more work needs to be done. We need Congress to continue to act on making sure that our communities are safe. Again, our hearts go out to this officer and his family. It's a difficult time for them.
Kennedy, I appreciate the empathy. I'm sure the family does. The reason I wanted to play that is the mention of gun violence. Like, it's important to talk about facts, how to stop things from happening. But in this case, the gun would have been obtained illegally, or at least possessed illegally, with all the felony counts. So I think a conversation about being tough on crime and recidivism is more applicable in this situation.
Yeah, it's like the president trying to name check Laken Riley during the State of the Union address and then later apologizing to her murderer for calling him an illegal. You know, it's this kind of grandstanding, and it's the shifting of the focus because this person did not walk into Cabela's and buy a gun legally. You know, and there are hundreds of millions of illegal guns in this country, and you actually need cops to put forward gun buyback programs in order to get the illegal guns off the streets. But they're being demonized. And to Lee's point, you know, in NYPD, we hear story after story of officers trying to find work on other smaller police forces so they don't interface with criminals like this on a daily basis. Because not only is it more dangerous, they don't have the kind of support that you need in a big city like New York. And that's why you're seeing this outpouring. That's why there were 1,000 people at that vigil. And just watch for how well attended these wakes are going to be and for that fallen officer's funeral. And what I think the former president should do is he should get empowered at that wake, and he should go over to Radio City and find Joe Biden. I'm sure their Secret Service details talk to one another, and he should debate him right then and there, because the coward who's in the Oval Office right now doesn't want to have an honest conversation about what's really going on in places like New York City that he just wants to milk for campaign cash.
Amen.
To that point, Lee, on our way out here, I do want to bring up, this is Politico Playbook. The Biden campaign says they will break fundraising records tonight with $25 million. What a beautiful display it would be if they took a portion of that. You have historic fundraising tonight, gave it to Tunnel to Towers, who's paying for this fallen officer's family's mortgage, give it to some charitable organization to support officers.
That's a great idea. And if you can't, if for whatever reason you're not able to make the wake, you can't make the funeral. I mean, I noticed KJP doesn't even say Officer Diller's name. That's a small way to be able to pay it forward for a family and others in need.
No doubt about it. All right, well, more Outnumbered next.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.